everyone. I'm Brannagh Breslin. Welcome to YANA LV, where we're on a mission to normalize mental health discussions and foster a supportive community. YANA stands for You Are Not Alone, and that's exactly what this show is all about. Here in the Lehigh Valley and beyond, we're breaking barriers and challenging the stigma surrounding mental health. Through candid conversations, expert insights, and personal stories, we're exploring the highs and lows of mental health and well-being altogether. Today, we're thrilled to be joined by actor Oakes Fegley. So, Oakes, do you want to give like a little brief intro? Like, is there anything you want to say?
Yeah, sure. I've been acting since I was around 7 years old. And I sort of started a little bit on stage. All my family are actors, and I sort of started getting into it through them, and quickly moved to sort of the film and TV space. I was in a couple TV shows at a pretty young age, and then booked a couple, larger feature films, and have sort of built a career off that, and continued to work. I'm always looking for different things, and I just filmed the second season of Dark Matter, which is our show on Apple TV, and excited to sort of see that come out hopefully pretty soon. But yeah, that's it. I've been working for a while, and um, definitely I have somewhat of a unique take because I've been doing it since I was so young.
Yeah, that's great. So, we're going to get started with the questions. So how did you first get interested in acting? I know you just said how, you were into like you been basically in the acting world since you were young. So like what role did like your early experiences play in shaping like your confidence and self-perception?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that is interesting when you're like a young person kind of getting into it, it's definitely unique, of course, and I'm sure everybody has a different experience. But for me, I was very much, um, when you're a kid, you have less fear, you have less inhibitions, and you're a little bit more, um, well, you're not quite, socially aware in a lot of ways. So in that way, it actually becomes somewhat easier um, to not be scared of going out there and just sort of doing things. And that's how it was for me. So my first couple of projects, there's definitely a little bit of pressure, a lot of pressure. And it's a lot of work, and it's something that I had to sort of get used to being on a set and being responsible for everybody's time, and respectful of that. Um, but I think it's different when you're getting into it when you're younger, and it's you're sort of, what if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah, that
You're
makes sense.
less
Yeah,
you're less scared to just try things out in a
yeah,
way, which I think
definitely.
is really awesome, but also um it comes with its own challenges as well, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. I'm not around, so even though like myself, I'm not an actor.
Yeah.
Even though that would be so cool. But I was just talking about, so I'm in like this dreams class at my school, and we were just talking about like when you're like talk about your nightmares when you're a kid. And honestly, it made me think about how like I wrote about like in the essay how like when I was a kid, I did whatever. Like I had like a little obsession with Michael Jackson and I would moonwalk everywhere. Like it was really weird, but I like didn't care. Like
Yeah.
I would do so yeah, I totally get what you're saying. Like I feel like when you're a kid, like honestly, like you kind of do whatever because it's like you don't really care too much what other people are saying, what other people think, and like you're not really aware of that either, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So yeah, I
absolutely.
think that's definitely like I feel like anyone could relate to that to like some like extent when they're a kid.
Yeah, for sure.
So many actors experience high pressure environments from a young age. So how did you navigate that pressure like growing up in this industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I mentioned, it comes with its own challenges, and I think it's definitely a really high pressure environment. I sort of mentioned being responsible for everybody's time. One thing when you're an actor that nobody really talks about, I feel like, very much, is that you are sort of, I mean, but from the second you start rolling, or we're working on something, and we're, doing 15 takes maybe of a given shot for a given scene. There's a lot of time that goes into it, and there's a lot of time where you are genuinely responsible sort of for everybody else that's there. So if you don't come prepared and you're not ready to go right away, that's time that everybody has to sit there and wait and work with you and build that up. And sometimes there's sometimes that can be good, right? Sometimes you need that time. Sometimes you need that time to
Yeah.
build the chemistry with your co-stars and get the vision that the director is trying to accomplish, right? And bring that to life on screen. But also, if you're not coming prepared um and you are genuinely just wasting people's time, then that's a problem. And I think that's something that when you're a kid, when you're growing up, I think you're not as aware of those sorts of things. So
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
something I always heard when I was younger, when I was on set, that people were very much like, "Thank you for being mature, Oakes, and thank you for being professional." And that's really what it is just being professional and being aware of that. But also that means you're not able to just goof around like a kid, right? So at the same time, you know, when you're a kid, you sort of want to be able to play around and want to be able to sort of have that childhood freedom, which you have to give up a little bit of that for that professionalism, and you have to um, be sort of willing to do that. You know what I mean?
Were you like, so I know obviously I'm sure you enjoy acting, but like when you were younger, did you kind of miss that like, like, oh, I kind of wish I was like my classmates or other like kids my age, I have to be more mature than them. Like, like what kind of went through like, your mind like during that?
Yeah, I think absolutely. But I was really lucky to have a family that valued me being in real school.
Hmm.
Um, both me and my two siblings, like we've always been in normal schools. We've always done sort of different things. My brother went through a Waldorf school. My sister went to Arts High School um, and charter high school
Yeah.
in the Lehigh Valley. She went to charter arts. Um, and I sort of took my own path. I sort of wanted to be more focused on academics, so I went to Swain, and then I went to Moravian after that. And so I think I always wanted to be in a real school environment, and my parents recognized that despite my work. You know what I mean? I think
Mhm. Yeah.
I was lucky enough to have teachers and have people at the schools that I went to willing to work with me and willing to allow that to happen. But yeah, I think that's something that was really important to me, was like being able to be a kid when I wasn't working.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, because you have to, like I said, you have to give that up when you're in a in a
Yeah.
professional space. So I think being able to come back to school and just be another one of the kids doing whatever, I think that's was always something that I really loved doing. And in a certain sense, I'm still doing that now. I go to school at Syracuse University, and um, very much value not only my education but also sort of being in a normal social environment that's not completely surrounded by work. Because to be frank, I think like that gives me a certain advantage in certain ways. I think I value that, and it um makes me feel much safer and comfortable in my own life and career and whatnot. So I think that's always something that I've valued, and I continue to value. Yeah.
Yeah, I think 100% I agree with you. I think education is so important. And, even if you're in the spotlight, I feel like it's still so vital to keep continuing. And like, I think one of my role models, like, even you actually might even know her, like, personally, which is funny to think about, but like Natalie Portman, like, she went to Harvard. And,
Yeah.
I like,
I
I,
don't know Natalie Portman, but she's
but yeah,
amazing, and I know she's
yeah.
very well educated herself.
Mhm. Like that is like I feel like that is so excellent. Like I feel like that is a person like honestly you like that people should look up to. It's like yeah, you can have your, not like fame, but like you can pursue other interests. But also
Yeah.
keep in mind, education is how you get more power, how you get more knowledgeable. It is so important, like I'm
Yeah.
not saying it should like be everything. Like obviously, I feel like the key to life is honestly balance, but I feel like, having not forgetting that education exists and that it is so helpful in so many ways, I think is so important. So I think that's so great that and we did go to school together. That's how I know you. So I
Yeah,
think it's like
exactly.
that's great. Like you went to like a real high school, not just did like online. Like I know some actors, like I read up
Yeah.
about it before interview, how like some actors did a lot of online school and that kind of, or even if they did online school, it didn't even feel like a real education, if that
Well,
makes sense.
there's a social aspect too. I think
Yeah.
that's really important.
Yeah.
As much as like I said, as much as I value my education, I think a lot of it also comes down to being in a social environment with
Mhm.
people who aren't necessarily actors and aren't
Yeah.
in that world because you learn a lot from different types of people. And I think for me, like I value my friendships with people who are outside of that sphere, as well as of course I love my friends who are as well. But um, it's just it's just a different type of life that everybody's you. I think it's valuable to meet different types of people
Yeah,
um,
definitely. Yeah.
and it even helps my work. It informs my work. Um, Talking to different people and sort of listening to their experiences, you're always able to bring that to the next role that you're playing. Um, and imagine, playing a role of somebody that reminds you of somebody and you always have something that you can bring to the table. I think that's also really valuable.
Yeah, it gives you like a unique perspective for sure. Could you share a role or project that challenged you emotionally and how you coped with it?
Yeah, it's a good one.
Like maybe your first role, I'm
Yeah.
not sure, anything just to help you
I
out.
think I've definitely there's emotional challenges with every role. I think one that comes to mind specifically, I did an episode on an anthology series on Fox called Accused. Um, and I played a character with sort of severe mental illness. Um, and he ends up doing some really horrible things at the end of the episode. Um, and it was really difficult for me to sort of weigh the emotional toll that it was taking on me while I was filming it, but also, thinking about how it would be received and thinking about how the project itself will be viewed and hopefully viewed as, something that's important and something that's a conversation that people need to be having about sort of again, mental illness, but also, yeah, just how that can affect people and how I think that was the most challenging role I remember in that sense. Everything has its own challenges, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean I've had certain roles that require me to sort of put myself in a you know an isolated and somewhat of a darker place, and um, I think that can be valuable at times, but you have to understand the limits of that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Have there been times in your career where you felt creatively or personally like stuck? And how did you work through these moments?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, I, as I think a lot of younger actors also experience, um, I was working as a child, and then when you go through puberty and you go through sort of adolescence, like that whole period of time, um, it's a huge change in your life, and you're experiencing a lot of new things, but also, um, there are different roles. Like you're falling into a different um, demographic. And because of that, you're going to be offered different roles and you're going to be up for different things. And that is a very challenging time for a lot of people. And it was definitely interesting for me. I went from being very, very busy when I was younger, to having a lot more time and not filming things nearly as frequently. And some of that came from being in a different part of my career where I was able to sort of be a little bit more picky. Um, with the roles that I was choosing and being able to sort of shape the career that I want. But
Mhm.
also some of that comes from there's a different availability of roles for someone 14 or 15. And then as you get older, it becomes a little bit more easy again because you're over 18 and you're able to work, um,
Yeah.
sort of as an adult, which changes things as well. Um, but yeah,
So, how do you balance the public side of your life with your private, like mental and like emotional well-being? Like, are you willing to talk more about that?
for me, it can be very challenging sometimes when you're traveling for work. Um, I was filming in Chicago for about 6 months. Um, Earlier this year, and that's a long time. It's a long time to sort of
Yeah.
be in a different place that you're maybe not used to, and um, you have to sort of be able to fully move to a new place and meet new people and be experiencing a lot of new things. And I'm still, young, so it brings its own challenges as well. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that can be really difficult. Um, yeah, and I think
Yeah.
that brings with it a lot of sort of my own anxieties about moving to a new place and having to still keep up with everything and now I'm 20 turning 21 soon and I have, a lot of um there's a lot more on my plate in some ways and there's a lot more time commitment that comes when you are working. You're able to work, longer days and things like that. So it can be a little bit more stressful for sure.
Yeah.
And managing that anxiety is difficult. I think um, for a while I didn't recognize or realize that that was a problem that I had or something that I had to work through, not necessarily a problem. But yeah, I think recognizing that and then being able to work with people to help you with that um, makes it a lot easier and makes it a lot more manageable to be managing it not alone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that's kind of, a little bit like of how I felt. Like I like going to college. Like so I'm in my first year at the University of Virginia and honestly, like I feel like I'm a social person, but I did find, difficult moments adjusting to a whole new place. Like I, you know, it was kind of hard like finding people. Like, yeah, it's easy to talk to people, but find people I like really like and I could tell
Yeah.
like value me for me, if that makes sense. And so I feel like, yeah, moving to a place, like a new place, even if it's a new house in the same area, I feel like I had my own anxieties about that, like how I'm gonna adjust, like to this new environment for sure. Like
Yeah.
I feel like for college, like I would always call my mom and dad every single day that I've been here. I call them every day for like an hour. And I feel like that's kind of my person that I talk to. Like I know how you said having a person is so important. Like,
Yeah.
make sure, you aren't alone. And even though they're not physically here and they're like miles away,
Yeah.
I feel like
Got
even that,
it.
yeah, I feel like that phone call, it just like makes me feel so much more like, okay, you know what? I'm young. You know what? It's okay. Like I'm still adjusting. I'm gonna find my people.
Course.
So
And
yeah.
it takes time, right? It doesn't
Mhm.
happen overnight. And yeah, it can be like a serious process.
Yeah,
And
definitely. Yeah.
sometimes there's more difficult parts to that. And sometimes, it seems like everything's gonna be fine and um you just have to push through.
Yeah.
I had the same experiences, I think it's a just shared experience going to college and having that sort of change.
Yeah. So how has your understanding of mental health evolved as you've grown both personally and professionally?
It's somewhat of a change of heart. I never um was somebody who really looked down upon therapy or was completely disconnected from um, thinking about my mental health or things like that. I think I have a lot of that to credit to my parents and my family. I think they did a good job instilling in me and my siblings that that was important and that was going to be challenging. Both of my parents have dealt with their own struggles and have been open to share that to us, especially as we were growing up. And I think that's also a valuable thing, that sort of transparency. Um, and so I had always thought about it, but I had never really, worried about myself too much. But as I got older, especially as I think mainly when I moved to college, I started to experience a lot more like personal anxiety and sort of had to figure out what that looks like for me and how to manage that and build new strategies to deal with that. Um, and I think that's an important thing to do, and it's an important thing for everybody to individually kind of find what works for them because it's not universal and everybody has like individual struggles and um, yeah, I think that's sort of more the personal side, and then on the professional side, like learning where to sort of what you're able to accomplish and what you're not, and being honest with yourself about, if you're feeling too stressed out, like maybe you need to communicate that. Maybe you need to talk to the people around you who can at least understand that maybe you're going through something and or whatever it might be. I think that communication can be really important. And it's hard and it's scary for a lot of people to communicate those problems. But I think that's an important thing for people to learn and for people to um, also be receptive of because it's a give and a take. I mean, as much as these are my problems, like everybody out there is also dealing with their own things. So to be aware and understanding of that too, I think is also part of part of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is so true. How every person, even if they maybe have the same kind of struggle, like if they're having test anxiety, it doesn't mean that they're gonna like be able to process it and really cope with it in the same exact way. Like, or even just like having overall like social anxiety per se. Like I feel like
Sure.
every person is exactly like I think you said it so great, like how every person goes through different things, like even if it's the same thing, like goes like process it and copes like differently, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. Like, yeah, I definitely think even even if therapy doesn't work, if that's just like a conversation with a friend, like a personal friend, like
Yeah.
instead of a professional, or like, writing in a journal about, this is how my day went, this is what I'm grateful for, that kind of thing. And yeah, I would say it's so important too that like a person doesn't just, even if they have the same struggle as someone else, that person, like that other person, they're finding a way to get through it and this other person isn't. I feel like it's so important to like not give up.
Yeah.
It takes time, like you said, like it takes time to find ways and it takes time to discover yourself, I would say.
Yeah. Because like again, it's not like one size fits all. Like you
Mhm.
have to sort of find what works for you and what will help you manage those problems. And also understand that you may have more struggles than someone else and that you may um, you know, be dealing with something that's more severe than other people and to be aware of that and to be able to communicate that I think is also an important thing. And again, it can be really hard.
If
Yeah.
you could give advice to young actors or creatives just struggling with anxiety, self doubt, or just anyone out there just like struggling with anxiety, self doubt, or stress, like what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing I would also say is, nobody's perfect. Like nobody has it figured out 100%. Um, and it's always changing and everybody's always changing and growing. And so, um, yeah, to remember that there's no such thing as perfection. I think, people are always striving. I think that's something I've had difficulty with is especially in um, something like an acting profession or performing art like that. I think striving for perfection is something that I've always like aimed to do, and that will never happen. And every take that we record on set, I'm always going to try to meet that, but it's never going to quite be exactly what I want it to be. And so to be aware of that and understanding of that, I think has been valuable for me. Um, but that comes down, that's a very specific example, but also that's the same concept I bring to like my mental health also. I'm never going to be able to perfectly deal with anything or manage it 100%. You just have to kind of take it day by day and, control the controllables. Um, Especially when you're in a profession where you don't have very much control or it's not always up to you. I think that can be a really valuable thing.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for sharing. That is all the time we have left for this episode. Um, so thank you so much, Oakes Fegley, for joining us this evening, and thank you, listeners, for tuning in. You can find past episodes and other locally produced programs at WDIY.org, on the WDIY app, and on other major podcast platforms. I'm Brannagh Breslin, and this is WDIY 88.1. We'll see you next time on YANA LV, and remember, you are not alone.